Captain Jake Morrison stood at the observation deck of Harmony Station, watching the alien ship approach through the darkness of space. The vessel was beautiful in a way that made his chest tight. It moved like liquid silver, flowing rather than flying through the void between stars. No human ship had ever moved like that. "Captain, they're requesting permission to dock," said Lieutenant Amy Foster from the communications station behind him. Her voice carried just a hint of nervousness that she was trying to hide. Jake turned away from the window. "Grant it, and remind everyone to follow protocol exactly as we practiced." This was it. First official contact between humans and an alien race. Sure, there had been rumors and stories for decades, but this was different. This was real, and it was happening on his watch. Dr. Lisa Park walked up beside him, her tablet clutched tightly in her hands. She had been studying every piece of data they had about these beings for months. The aliens called themselves the Kalari, and they had been watching human broadcasts for over 30 years before finally deciding to make contact. "Are you ready for this, Lisa?" Jake asked. Lisa pushed her glasses up her nose and nodded. "As ready as anyone can be for meeting beings from another world, I suppose." Commander Ryan Cole joined them, his hand resting naturally on his weapon. Jake had insisted on having security present, but he hoped they would not need it. The Kalari had been nothing but polite in their transmissions. They spoke of friendship and mutual benefit. Still, Jake had not survived this long by being careless. "Their ship is docking now," Ryan reported. "My teams are in position but staying back as ordered." The three humans made their way to the main docking bay. Jake had chosen this location carefully. It was large enough to accommodate their guests, but not so big as to make the humans look small. The lighting was warm and welcoming, and they had even played some soft classical music in the background. A dozen other crew members stood at attention around the bay. Everyone had been briefed. Be respectful, be friendly. But remember that these beings were far more advanced than humans. Their technology was centuries ahead of anything Earth had produced. The airlock cycled with a soft hiss. Jake felt his heart pound as the inner door began to open. This moment would be remembered forever. Children would read about it in history books. His name would be linked to this day for as long as humans existed. The first Kalari stepped through the doorway, and Jake forgot to breathe. The being was tall, maybe 7 feet, with long limbs that moved with fluid grace. Its skin was pale blue, like moonlight on water, and seemed to glow softly in the bay's lighting. The most striking feature was its eyes. They were large and dark, taking up much of its face, and they seemed to contain depths that went on forever. More Kalari followed. 5 in total. They wore simple robes that shifted color as they moved, and they carried no visible weapons. Each one was beautiful in the same otherworldly way, though Jake could see subtle differences that suggested they were individuals, not copies. The first, Kalari stepped forward and raised one long-fingered hand in what might have been a greeting. When it spoke, its voice came through the translation device they had provided, turning alien sounds into clear English. "I am Ambassador Zethkar of the Kalari Collective. We come in peace and friendship to meet the humans of Earth." Jake stepped forward, trying to project confidence he did not entirely feel. "Welcome to Harmony Station, Ambassador. I am Captain Jake Morrison, representing the United Earth Government. We are honored by your presence." The ambassador's large eyes focused on Jake with an intensity that made him uncomfortable. It felt like being examined under a microscope. "The honor is ours, Captain Morrison. Your species has much potential." Dr. Park moved forward with her tablet ready. "Ambassador, we have prepared facilities for our discussions. We hope they will be suitable for your needs." "I am certain they will be adequate," Zethkar replied. There was something in the way he said adequate that made Jake frown slightly. It sounded almost condescending, though he might have been reading too much into it. As they walked toward the conference room, Jake noticed how the other Kalari moved. They seemed to communicate without speaking, turning their heads in unison or making subtle gestures that appeared coordinated. Dr. Park had mentioned in her briefings that the Kalari might be telepathic, but seeing it was different from reading about it. The conference room had been set up with care. A large table sat in the center with chairs sized for both humans and their taller guests. Refreshments had been prepared, though they were not sure what the Kalari could eat. The walls displayed peaceful images of Earth and its people. Ambassador Zethkar took his seat with fluid grace, his fellow Kalari arranging themselves around him in what looked like a protective formation. Jake sat across from the ambassador with Lisa and Ryan on either side. Before we begin formal discussions, Zethkar said, "It is customary among my people to establish a personal connection with those we negotiate with." Jake nodded carefully. What would that involve? A simple touch, nothing more. It allows us to better understand each other's intentions and avoid misunderstandings. Lisa leaned forward slightly. Is this a telepathic connection? Zethkar's expression might have been a smile, though it was hard to tell on his alien features. In a manner of speaking, we find it helps create trust between species. Jake felt Ryan tense beside him, but he kept his own expression neutral. This was exactly the kind of thing they had prepared for. Unknown customs and practices that might seem strange, but were meant to be friendly. If it's your custom, Ambassador, then of course we will respect it. Zethkar rose from his chair and moved around the table toward Jake. His movements were hypnotic, like watching water flow uphill. Jake stood as well, not wanting to appear rude by remaining seated. The ambassador reached out with one long, pale hand. His fingers were longer than human fingers with what looked like small suction cups at the tips. "This will only take a moment, Captain Morrison." Jake extended his own hand, trying to ignore the way Ryan's hand had moved closer to his weapon. This was diplomacy. This was how first contact was supposed to work. Two species meeting in peace and trying to understand each other. The ambassador's hand was cool and dry as it touched Jake's shoulder. For a moment, nothing happened. Then Zethkar's large eyes went wide, and his mouth opened in what could only be described as horror. The scream that followed was unlike anything Jake had ever heard. The scream cut through the conference room like a knife through silence. Ambassador Zethkar's voice rose to impossible heights, a sound that seemed to come from somewhere deep in his chest. His large dark eyes rolled back until only white showed, and his tall body began to shake violently. Jake jerked his hand back, but the ambassador's grip on his shoulder tightened like a vice. The alien's fingers, with their strange suction cup tips, held on as if his life depended on it, or as if he could not let go. "What's happening?" Jake shouted over the continuing scream. Commander Ryan Cole was already moving, his weapon half drawn from its holster. The other Kalari around the table had all gone rigid, their mouths open in silent screams of their own. Their eyes had the same rolled-back appearance as their ambassador, and they swayed in their chairs like trees in a hurricane. Dr. Lisa Park grabbed her medical scanner from her belt. "Jake, try to break contact. Something's wrong." Jake pulled harder, but Zethkar's grip was stronger than any human's. The ambassador's scream had changed now, becoming words in his own language that the translation device could not handle. The sounds were full of terror and something else. Pain, maybe, or shock. "Ryan, help me!" Jake called. Ryan holstered his weapon and grabbed the ambassador's arm, trying to pry the alien fingers loose. But as soon as his skin touched the Kalari's, Ryan froze. His eyes went wide and he stumbled backward. "What did you feel?" Lisa demanded. Ryan shook his head, looking confused. "I don't know. Like touching a live wire, but not electrical. Something else." The other Kalari in the room suddenly collapsed. All four of them fell from their chairs at the same moment, hitting the floor with soft thuds. They were still breathing, but their eyes remained rolled back and their bodies twitched. Ambassador Zethkar's scream finally began to fade, becoming a low moan. His grip on Jake's shoulder loosened, and Jake was able to step back. The ambassador swayed for a moment, then crashed to the floor like a tree falling. "Medical team to conference room 7, Lisa called into her communicator. "Emergency situation." Jake rubbed his shoulder where the ambassador had gripped him. The skin felt cold, almost numb. "What just happened?" "I think," Lisa said, kneeling beside the fallen ambassador with her scanner. "He tried to read your mind and something went very wrong." The ambassador's eyes were moving beneath his closed lids like someone in the deepest stage of sleep. His breathing was quick and shallow, and his pale blue skin had turned even paler, almost white. Ryan was checking on the other Kalari. They're all the same. Unconscious but alive. It's like they all experienced the same thing at the same time. They're connected somehow, Jake realized. When he touched my mind, it affected all of them through their telepathic link. Lisa's scanner beeped as it analyzed the ambassador's vital signs. His brain activity is off the charts. Whatever happened, his mind is working harder than it should be possible to survive. The medical team arrived with Dr. Kevin Banks leading them. He took one look at the scene and started giving orders. Get stretchers for all of them. Careful, with their heads. And I want full scans on Captain Morrison too. I'm fine, Jake protested. Maybe you are, maybe you're not. But you were connected to whatever this was. I'm not taking chances. As the medical team worked to move the unconscious Kalari to the medical bay, Jake found himself thinking about what had happened. The ambassador had wanted to establish a personal connection. He had said it was to understand each other's intentions. But the moment their minds had touched, everything had gone wrong. Lisa, Jake said quietly. What do you think he saw in my head? Dr. Park looked troubled. I don't know. But based on his reaction, it wasn't what he expected. They followed the medical team to the medical bay, where Dr. Banks was setting up monitoring equipment around the ambassador's bed. The other Kalari had been placed in nearby beds, all showing the same symptoms. Unconscious, but with extremely active brain patterns. Any theories, Doc? Ryan asked. Dr. Banks shook his head. Nothing like this in any of our files. Their brain structure is different from ours, obviously, but the readings I'm getting don't make sense. It's like their minds are stuck in some kind of loop. Ambassador Zethkar's eyes suddenly snapped open. He sat up so fast that Dr. Banks jumped backward. The alien's large dark eyes darted around the room until they found Jake. You, he whispered, his voice barely audible through the translation device. What are you? Jake stepped closer to the bed. I'm human. You know that. No. Zethkar shook his head violently. No. Humans are simple. We watched your broadcasts. We studied your behavior. You are primitive creatures with basic thoughts and simple emotions. Maybe you were wrong about us, Jake said carefully. The ambassador's eyes filled with something that looked like fear. Your mind. It is not like the others we have encountered. It is chaos. Beautiful, terrible chaos. I don't understand. Zethkar struggled to sit up fully, his long limbs shaking with effort. When I touched your thoughts, I expected to find a calm pool. Instead, I found a storm, a hurricane of consciousness that nearly destroyed my mind. Dr. Park leaned forward. What did you see exactly? Everything, the ambassador whispered. Everything at once. Your captain was thinking about this meeting, but also about his family. He was remembering his childhood and planning his dinner and worrying about ship maintenance and dreaming about flying and feeling love and fear and curiosity all at the same time. Jake frowned. That's normal for humans. It is not normal for anyone. Zethkar's voice rose. No mind should be able to contain such chaos and still function. You think in patterns that should drive you insane, yet you not only survive, but thrive. One of the other Kalari stirred in his bed, making soft moaning sounds. Zethkar looked toward his companion with concern. The others felt it too, the ambassador explained. Through our mental link. They experienced a fraction of what I felt, and it was still overwhelming. Are they going to be okay? Jake asked. I do not know. We have never encountered anything like human consciousness before. Your minds are like fire where ours are like still water. The contact burned us. Dr. Banks checked his readings again. Their brain activity is starting to stabilize, but it's still much higher than baseline. Zethkar looked directly at Jake with an expression that might have been awe or terror. Captain Morrison, I must ask you something, and I need you to answer truthfully. What? Are all humans like you? Jake glanced at Lisa and Ryan, then back at the ambassador. Pretty much, yeah. We all think about multiple things at once. Our minds jump around a lot. I guess you could call it chaotic. The ambassador closed his eyes and was quiet for a long moment. When he opened them again, there was something different in his expression. Respect, maybe, or fear. Then we have made a terrible mistake, he said softly. We came here believing we understood your species. We thought we could predict your behavior, possibly even control it through our telepathic abilities. And now? Ryan asked. Zethkar looked at each of the humans in turn. Now I realize that we are the primitives here. Your minds contain universes of thought that we cannot even comprehend. You are not the simple species we believed you to be. The ambassador lay back down, exhaustion clear on his alien features. We must speak more when I have recovered. There is much we need to discuss, and everything we planned must change. As the medical team continued their work, Jake found himself wondering what this meant for humanity's future among the stars. They had expected to be the junior partners in this relationship, learning from a more advanced species. Instead, it seemed they had accidentally terrified their first alien contact simply by thinking like humans. 3 hours later, Ambassador Zethkar was sitting up in the medical bay bed, looking much better but still shaken. The other Kalari had also recovered, though they stayed close together and spoke in whispers when they thought the humans could not hear them. Dr. Lisa Park sat in a chair beside the ambassador's bed, her tablet ready to record everything. Captain Jake Morrison and Commander Ryan Cole stood nearby, all of them curious about what had really happened during that terrifying moment of contact. Ambassador, Lisa began gently, can you help us understand what you experienced? What you saw in Jake's mind? Zethkar's large dark eyes focused on Jake, and for a moment Jake thought he saw the alien shudder slightly. Dr. Park, how do I explain color to someone who has never seen? How do I describe sound to the deaf? Try, Jake said. We need to understand this if we're going to work together. The ambassador was quiet for several seconds, clearly thinking hard about how to put his experience into words the humans could understand. Among my people, he finally said, telepathic contact is like looking into a clear, calm lake. I can see to the bottom easily. The thoughts are organized, flowing in neat patterns from one idea to the next. When we think about food, we think only about food until that thought is complete. When we consider a problem, we focus on that problem alone until we solve it or set it aside. Lisa nodded. That sounds very efficient. It is how intelligent minds are supposed to work, Zethkar agreed. When I have made contact with other species across the galaxy, their minds have been similar. Some are deeper lakes, some are shallow pools, but all are calm and organized. But human minds are different, Jake said. Different? The ambassador's voice rose slightly. Captain Morrison, your mind is not a lake. It is an ocean in the middle of the worst storm ever recorded. Ryan frowned. That doesn't sound good. That is what terrified me at first, Zethkar admitted. But now that I have had time to think about it, I realize it is not bad. It is simply beyond anything we thought possible. Dr. Park leaned forward. Can you be more specific about what you saw? Zethkar closed his eyes as if remembering was difficult. The moment I touched Captain Morrison's mind, I was hit by thousands of thoughts all happening at the same time. He was thinking about this meeting, yes, but also about a song he heard yesterday morning. He was worried about whether we might be dangerous, but at the same time he was proud of humanity for reaching this moment. He was remembering the taste of coffee from breakfast while simultaneously calculating how long it would take to call for help if needed. Jake shifted uncomfortably. That's just normal thinking. No, it is not. Zethkar opened his eyes wide. No mind should be able to hold so many different thoughts at once. But that was only the beginning. Underneath all those surface thoughts, I found layers upon layers of memory and emotion all active at the same time. Layers? Lisa asked. Captain Morrison was remembering his daughter's first steps while also thinking about military tactics. He was feeling love for his family and concern for his crew and curiosity about us and a dozen other emotions all at once. And somehow, Through all of this chaos, he was still able to focus on our conversation and make intelligent decisions. Ryan looked impressed despite himself. When you put it that way, it does sound pretty complicated. Complicated? Zethkar actually laughed, a sound like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. Commander Cole, what I experienced was like trying to drink from a waterfall while standing in an earthquake during a lightning storm. It should have been impossible for any mind to function under such conditions, but human minds do function, Lisa pointed out. Exactly. That is what makes you so remarkable. And so terrifying to species like mine. Jake sat down in another chair. Ambassador, you said earlier that you came here thinking you understood humans. What did you mean? Zethkar looked uncomfortable. We have been monitoring your radio and television broadcasts for over 30 years. We studied your behavior, your conflicts, your art and entertainment. Based on what we observed, we concluded that humans were a young, primitive species with simple thought patterns and basic emotions. You thought we were dumb, Ryan said bluntly. Not dumb exactly, but limited. We believed your minds worked like ours, only less developed. We thought that with our advanced telepathic abilities, we could easily understand your motivations and predict your actions. And then you touched my mind, Jake said. And then I learned that we understood nothing about you at all. Zethkar shook his head. Your broadcasts showed us only the surface of human behavior. We saw your wars and concluded you were violent. We saw your entertainment and thought you were easily distracted. We saw your political arguments and believed you were divided and weak. Dr. Park was taking notes rapidly. But now you see it differently. Now I realize that everything we observed was the result of minds so complex that we could not even comprehend them. Your wars are not simple violence. They come from layers of history and emotion and belief all interacting in ways we never imagined. Your entertainment is not distraction. It is the product of imagination so powerful they can create entire worlds from nothing. What about our political arguments? Jake asked with a slight smile. Those may be the most impressive of all, Zethkar said seriously. You can hold completely opposite ideas in your minds at the same time and still function. You can understand your opponent's position while disagreeing with it. You can change your beliefs based on new information while still maintaining your core values. It is mental flexibility that should not be possible. One of the other Kalari, a female named Yethera, spoke up from her nearby bed. Ambassador, should we tell them about the original plan? Zethkar looked uncomfortable again. Perhaps honesty is best now. What original plan? Ryan's voice had an edge to it. We came here intending to offer you membership in the Galactic Collective, Zethkar explained slowly. But not as equals. We believed humans would make excellent workers and soldiers, taking orders from more advanced species like ourselves. The humans exchanged glances. Jake felt a cold anger building in his chest, but he kept his voice level. You were planning to make us your servants. That is no longer possible, Zethkar said quickly. Even if we wanted to, which we do not. After what I have learned, it would be impossible to control minds like yours. Any species capable of the mental complexity I experienced would be unpredictable in ways that make control impossible. Good thing, Ryan muttered. You do not understand, Yethera said. This changes everything for the collective. We have been the dominant telepathic species for thousands of years. We guide and direct other species because we can understand their simple thought patterns. But humans think in ways we cannot even follow, let alone predict or control. Dr. Park looked up from her notes. Are you saying that human mental complexity gives us an advantage over other galactic species? Zethkar nodded slowly. Dr. Park, in my experience with dozens of intelligent species across the galaxy, most problems have one or two logical solutions. A calm, organized mind will find these solutions efficiently. And chaotic human minds, Jake asked, will find solutions that no logical mind would ever consider. You will think of possibilities that we cannot imagine. You will make connections between ideas that seem completely unrelated. You will succeed in situations where every logical approach fails. Because we're crazy enough to try things that shouldn't work, Ryan said with a grin. Exactly. Zethkar seemed excited now. Your mental chaos is not a weakness. It is a form of intelligence so advanced that it appears primitive to those who cannot understand it. Jake stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the stars. So what happens now, Ambassador? You can't make us your workers, and we've accidentally proven that humans might be more dangerous than you expected. I do not think humans are dangerous, Captain Morrison. I think they are miraculous. Jake turned back to face the alien. Miraculous? In all my travels, I have never encountered minds that contain entire universes of thought. You are not just another species joining the galaxy. You are something completely new. Sethkar struggled to sit up straighter. With your permission, I would like to contact the collective and recommend that this first contact be considered a historic moment. Not because we have found a new servant species, but because we have discovered that intelligence can evolve in ways we never dreamed possible. And what would that mean for humanity? Lisa asked. It would mean, the ambassador said with something that might have been a smile, that the galaxy is about to become a much more interesting place. The next day, Dr. Lisa Park found herself in the most unusual research session of her career. She sat across from Ambassador Zethkar in a quiet room adjacent to the medical bay, both of them surrounded by books, tablets, and recording devices. The ambassador had requested to learn more about human thinking, and Lisa was eager to understand more about what made human minds so shocking to the Kalari. Ambassador, you mentioned that human minds think in layers, Lisa said. Can you explain what you mean by that? Zethkar had recovered much of his strength, though he still looked tired. Dr. Park, when I think about this conversation, I think only about this conversation. My mind is focused entirely on our words, our ideas, nothing else. That sounds very peaceful, Lisa admitted. It is efficient. But when I touched Captain Morrison's mind yesterday, I discovered that he was having this conversation with me while simultaneously thinking about at least a dozen other things. He was listening to my words, but also analyzing my body language, remembering similar conversations from his past, planning his responses, worrying about his crew, and thinking about his family back on Earth. Lisa nodded. That's normal for humans. We call it multitasking. But it is more than multitasking, Zethkar insisted. All of these thoughts were connected to each other in ways that created new ideas. Captain Morrison was not just thinking about many things at once. He was using those many thoughts to understand me better than any single focused mind could. Can you give me an example? Zethkar was quiet for a moment, clearly trying to find the right words. When I spoke about peaceful cooperation between our species, Captain Morrison heard my words, but at the same time he was remembering human history lessons about other promises of peace that were broken. He was thinking about his military training and what it taught him about potential threats. He was also feeling hope that our species could truly be friends. So he was being cautious and hopeful at the same time? Yes, but that is not all. These different thoughts and feelings were combining in his mind to create new questions. He was wondering if there were other species in the galaxy, and whether they might be threats to Earth and how humanity could best prepare for an unknown future. All of this happened in the few seconds while I was speaking about cooperation. Lisa was taking notes rapidly. That's actually a very sophisticated analysis. He was using multiple information sources to develop strategy. Exactly. But no Kalari. Mind could hold so many conflicting ideas at once. We would have to think about each concept separately, one at a time, and then combine them logically. By the time we finished that process, the conversation would have moved on, and we would have missed important information. Commander Ryan Cole entered the room carrying a cup of coffee and a tablet. Sorry to interrupt, but Jake wanted me to share something with you both. What is it? Lisa asked. Ryan sat down and activated his tablet, showing them a series of military reports. These are records from some of humanity's most famous battles. Jake thought they might help explain what the ambassador experienced. How so? Zethkar asked, leaning forward with interest. Well, Ryan said, pulling up the first report. Take the Battle of Gettysburg during our American Civil War. The Union. General George Meade made a decision to fight on terrain that every military textbook said was wrong for his army. Why did he make such an illogical choice? Because he was not thinking like a textbook. He was thinking about troop morale, supply lines, weather conditions, political pressure from Washington, the personality of the enemy general, and about 20 other factors all at the same time. The logical choice would have been to retreat and find better ground. But Meade's chaotic human thinking led him to realize that sometimes the illogical choice is the right one. Zethkar's eyes went wide. And this won the battle? This saved the entire war, Ryan said. If he had made the logical choice, his country might have been split in half permanently. Lisa looked up from her notes. Ryan, do you have examples from more recent conflicts? Dozens of them, Ryan replied, scrolling through his tablet. Human military history is full of victories that came from commanders thinking in ways that shouldn't work but somehow do. He pulled up another file. During World War II, there was a general named George Patton. He was famous for making rapid decisions that seemed crazy to everyone around him, but his mind was processing information about enemy psychology, weather patterns, fuel supplies, troop readiness, and dozens of other factors simultaneously. What made him successful? Zethkar asked. He could see patterns that logical, step-by-step thinking would miss. While other generals were carefully analyzing each factor one by one, Patton's chaotic mind was already combining everything into a complete picture and acting on it. Dr. Park was fascinated. So human mental chaos actually gives us strategic advantages? It gets better, Ryan said with a grin. Our chaos also makes us unpredictable to enemies. In every major conflict, human forces have won battles by doing things that made no logical sense. We attack when we should defend. We retreat when we should advance. And somehow it works because our enemies can't predict our illogical behavior. Zethkar sat back in his chair looking stunned. You are telling me that human minds are naturally designed for warfare? Not just warfare, Lisa said thoughtfully. Ryan, what about scientific discoveries? I bet we have similar examples there. Absolutely, Ryan said, switching to a different file. Some of humanity's greatest scientific breakthroughs came from people thinking in ways that violated all logical procedures. He showed them a report about Alexander Fleming's discovery of penicillin. Fleming was supposed to be conducting careful, controlled experiments. Instead, his mind was jumping between different ideas, and he accidentally left some bacterial cultures uncovered. A logical mind would have thrown away the contaminated samples and started over. But Fleming's chaotic thinking saw opportunity in the mistake. Lisa finished. Right. His mind was simultaneously thinking about bacteria, mold, medical applications, and pure curiosity. He saw connections that a step-by-step logical approach would never have found. That accidental discovery has saved millions of lives. Zethkar was shaking his head in amazement. Your species makes crucial discoveries by making mistakes and seeing value in failure. This should not be possible. Want another example? Ryan asked, clearly enjoying the ambassador's reactions. Albert Einstein developed his theory of relativity not through logical step-by-step mathematics, but through thought experiments where he imagined riding on beams of light. He used his imagination to understand the universe. His chaotic mind was combining physics, mathematics, philosophy, and pure imagination all at once. He was asking what-if questions that no logical mind would waste time on. But those impossible questions led to discoveries that changed how we understand reality. Dr. Park was writing furiously. Ambassador, does this help explain what you experienced when you touched Jake's mind? It explains everything, Zethkar said quietly. I thought I was touching the mind of a primitive creature. Instead, I encountered a form of intelligence so advanced that it appears chaotic to lesser minds like mine. Lesser minds? Ryan raised an eyebrow. Commander Cole, my people have been traveling the galaxy for thousands of years. We have contacted dozens of species and guided their development. We have always been the teachers, the wise ones who help younger races grow. Zethkar looked out the window at the stars. But now I realize that we have been like children playing with simple toys, thinking we understand complexity. Humans have evolved a form of consciousness that can solve problems we cannot even recognize exist. What does that mean for the future? Lisa asked. It means, the ambassador said slowly, that humanity is not going to be joining the galactic community as students learning from their teachers. You are going to change everything we thought we knew about intelligence, creativity, and what it means to be truly advanced. Ryan leaned forward. Are the other species in the galaxy going to see that as good news or bad news? Sethkar's expression was hard to read. That, Commander, is going to depend on how ready the galaxy is for a revolution in thinking, because that is what humanity represents. You are not just another species. You are proof that intelligence can evolve beyond anything we imagined possible. And some species might not like that idea, Lisa said. Some species, Sethkar agreed, are going to be very frightened indeed. 1 week later, Captain Jake Morrison stood in the same observation deck where this adventure had begun, watching the Kalari ship prepare for departure. But everything was different now. The silvery vessel no longer seemed intimidating. Instead, it looked almost fragile compared to what he now understood about humanity's place in the galaxy. Ambassador Sethkar approached, walking much more steadily than he had a few days ago. The alien's recovery had been remarkable, and Dr. Lisa Park believed that his exposure to human consciousness had actually improved his telepathic abilities in unexpected ways. Captain Morrison, the ambassador said, I wanted to speak with you privately before we depart. Of course, Ambassador. What's on your mind? Sethkar's large dark eyes seemed to glow with an inner light that had not been there before. I want to thank you for showing me what true intelligence looks like. Jake frowned. I didn't do anything special. I just thought like a human. Exactly. And in doing so, you opened my mind to possibilities I never knew existed. The ambassador moved closer to the observation window. Captain, when I first touched your consciousness, I thought I was going to die. The chaos was overwhelming, terrifying, beautiful and impossible all at once. You've mentioned that, but you survived it. More than survived it. I have been forever changed by the experience. Sethkar held up one of his long-fingered hands. Since our contact, I find that my own mind works differently. I can hold multiple thoughts at once now, something that was impossible for me before. I can see connections between ideas that I would never have noticed. It is as if you taught me to see colors that did not exist in my world. Jake was amazed. Human thinking rubbed off on you? In a way, yes. My people are fascinated by this development. We have sent the recordings of our session to the Collective Council, and they are demanding to meet with human representatives immediately. Is that good or bad? Sethkar was quiet for a moment. It is unprecedented. The Council has ruled the galaxy for over 5,000 years, based on the belief that telepathic species like mine represent the highest form of intelligence possible. The discovery that human minds are more complex than ours challenges everything they thought they knew. Dr. Park and Commander Ryan Cole joined them at the observation window. Lisa was carrying a thick folder full of research notes, while Ryan had his tablet loaded with military and historical data they had shared with the Kalari delegation. Ambassador, Lisa said, have you decided what you're going to tell the Council about us? I'm going to tell them the truth. That humanity represents a new form of consciousness that is both more advanced and more adaptable than anything we have encountered before. Sethkar turned to face all three humans. But I am also going to recommend that first contact proceed very carefully. Why? Ryan asked. Because not all species will react to this news as positively as the Kalari have. Some may see humanity as a threat to their position in the galactic hierarchy. Jake felt a chill run down his spine. Are you saying there might be species that would try to attack Earth? I am saying that there are species that have built their entire civilizations on the belief that they are superior to others. The discovery that humans can think in ways they cannot even comprehend will be very disturbing to them. Lisa looked worried. How many species are we talking about? The Galactic Collective includes 47 different intelligent species, spread across thousands of worlds. Most are peaceful and will welcome humanity with excitement. But there are perhaps a dozen species that might view your mental abilities as dangerous. Ryan activated his tablet. Ambassador, we need to know what humanity might be facing. Can you tell us about these potentially hostile species? Zethkar nodded slowly. The Vorthon Empire, for example, has controlled trade routes in their region for 2,000 years because they believe themselves intellectually superior to all other races. They force other species to serve them by claiming it is for the greater good of galactic civilization. And they might not like learning that humans are smarter than they are, Jake said. Exactly. There are also the mechanist collectives, machine, intelligences that pride themselves on perfect logical thinking. They view emotion and chaos as flaws to be eliminated. Human consciousness would be seen as an infection that needs to be cured. Dr. Park was taking notes. What about allies? Which species might support humanity? The Kalari will certainly support you. We have already been changed by contact with human minds, and we see the potential for incredible advances in science and philosophy through cooperation with your species. Zethkar thought for a moment. The Wanderer fleets might also be friendly. They are explorers and traders who value new experiences and ideas. The discovery of human consciousness would fascinate them. What about the Council itself? Ryan asked. Will they be friendly or hostile? The Council is divided into factions. Some will see humanity as an opportunity for the galaxy to advance in ways never before possible. Others will see you as a threat to established order that must be controlled or eliminated. Jake walked closer to the window, looking out at the stars with new understanding. So we're not just joining a peaceful galactic community. We're walking into a political situation that could lead to war. That is possible, Zethkar admitted. But Captain Morrison, I want you to understand something important. After experiencing human consciousness firsthand, I believe that any species foolish enough to make war against humanity would lose. Why do you say that? Because human minds can adapt and improvise in ways that will be impossible for your enemies to predict or counter. They will plan their attacks using logical, step-by-step thinking. Meanwhile, humans will be finding solutions they never considered and responding in ways they cannot prepare for. Ryan grinned. Sounds like our kind of fight. It may not come to fighting, Lisa said hopefully. Maybe we can find peaceful solutions. Dr. Park, that is what I am hoping for as well. Which is why I have a proposal for Captain Morrison. Jake turned back to face the ambassador. What kind of proposal? I want to recommend to the Council that humanity be granted immediate full membership in the collective, not as a junior species learning from their elders, but as equals with full voting rights and representation. That's a big change from your original plan, Ryan pointed out. Our original plan was based on complete ignorance of what humans truly are, Zethkar said firmly. Any attempt to treat humanity as inferior would be both wrong and dangerous. Jake considered this. What would full membership mean for Earth? It would mean that humanity would have a voice in galactic affairs from the beginning. You would help shape policies that affect billions of beings across thousands of worlds. You would also have access to technologies and knowledge that could advance human civilization by centuries in just a few years. And the responsibilities? You would be expected to contribute to galactic defense, scientific research, and peaceful resolution of conflicts between species. But given what I have learned about human capabilities, I believe you would excel at all of these roles. Dr. Park looked excited. Ambassador, this could mean incredible advances in medicine, technology, space travel, everything. It could also mean that Earth becomes a target for species that don't want humanity to have that kind of influence, Ryan added. Zethkar nodded seriously. Both possibilities are real. That is why this decision must be made carefully by your leaders, not rushed into without full understanding of the consequences. Jake made his decision. Ambassador, I'll recommend to Earth government that we accept your proposal, but with conditions. We want to meet representatives from multiple species before making final commitments. And we want time to prepare Earth for what's coming. That is wise. I will arrange for a series of meetings between human representatives and various council members over the next few months. This will give both sides time to understand each other better. As the Kalari ship began its departure sequence, Zethkar shook hands with each of the humans in the traditional Earth manner. When he reached Jake, the ambassador paused. Captain Morrison, may I ask you something personal? Sure. When I touched your mind, I experienced something I have never felt before. Hope mixed with determination, curiosity combined with caution, love intertwined with duty. How do you live with so many intense feelings at once? Jake smiled. I guess we just get used to it. That's what makes us human. Then perhaps, Zethkar said thoughtfully, becoming more human is exactly what the galaxy needs. As the alien ship disappeared into hyperspace, Jake stood with his crew watching the stars. Somewhere out there, 47 different species were about to learn that humanity had arrived. Some would welcome them as friends, others might see them as enemies. But for the first time since first contact began, Jake was not worried about humanity's chances among the stars. After all, they had something no other species possessed. Minds chaotic enough to find solutions that should not exist, creative enough to turn disadvantages into strengths, and stubborn enough to never give up. The galaxy was about to discover what humans had always known. Sometimes the best way to solve an impossible problem is to think about it in impossible ways, and humanity was very good at impossible.